Chris Scalzer here with
Matt Howell.
And on this episode of The First Run, that is best enjoyed while drinking a cup of Earl Grey tea, as your erstwhile host is doing this evening, we're going to be discussing the latest film from Pixar, Onward. We've seen a lot of sequels lately from Pixar, Matt, so let's see what happens when we have a fresh new property here back out in the theaters. Our martial arts marathon continues with Come Drink With Me, which is the weirdest title for a martial arts film that I can think of. Is the film just as weird? We're also going to discuss our 5 favorite animated films from the last decade. That's 2010 through 2019. And don't give me any of this 2011 crap, all right? I'm not going to deal with it. So let's start everything off with a clip from Onward.
Here we go. Focus. Something wrong?
Sorry, it's just your stance is, here, chin up, elbows out, feet apart, back, slightly arched. Okay, how's that feel?
Great.
Oh, one more thing.
Barley.
Okay.
Magnora, get you one.
Don't let the magic spook you.
Okay.
Elbows.
What?
Elbows up. No, it's too high. That's too high.
I'm trying to focus here.
Oh, yeah. Focus on the can. Focus.
Barley! Ah, forget it!
It worked! The can is huge! And the band is huge!
So everything is huge. Matt, Pixar is back with Onward. Why don't you tell the fine folks sitting on their recumbent bicycles or just desperately hiding from the coronavirus? What is Onward all about? And I'm going to have another sip of tea.
Okay. In this universe, populated by what we would consider magical creatures, elves, manticores, pixies, trolls, where essentially magic existed in the distant past, but it was too hard to master, so they came up with technology, and essentially magic was lost. These 2 elf brothers voiced, I should say, by Tom Holland and Chris Pratt, who lost their father while they were very young, discovers a spell on the younger brother's 16th birthday that can possibly bring him back for one day. But they mess up the spell and only bring back his legs. So the rest of the film is a quest to see if they can bring back the rest of him so they can meet and spend time with their dad.
So Matt, do we have a fantastic new property with just endless sequel potential for Pixar? Or should we just have maybe gotten WALL-E 2 instead?
So as far as of a fantastic property, I would say yes, because I thoroughly enjoyed this. I mean, I know a lot of people reading some of the reviews, or at least kind of skimming the reviews, a lot of people either really loved it or they were very underwhelmed by it. I'm in the former camp. I think it's way better than the kind of stint of sequels that Pixar's put out. I don't think this thing has the potential for, a Cars, Planes extravaganza spinoff thing, but I guess you never know. I would hope it wouldn't, but I think it's Pixar's strongest film in a while.
I guess that's probably a fair statement, right? So what have we been dealing with Pixar movies as of late? Now listen, I really enjoy Toy Story 4. That's how we pronounce it here in Tampa, 4. Coco is fantastic. Right? I mean, that's 2017. And then stuff. They have Soul coming out this year. Inside Out is really strong. That's a unique property as well, just like Coco.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, Finding Dory was okay.
The Good Dinosaur, not great.
Did not see
Monsters
that.
University,
Not great.
Great.
So, Cars 2 was 2011. Let's see if that ends up on Matt's list at the end of the show. Listen, this is good. All right? It's fine. I know it's better than fine. I do think it takes a little bit to get going, Matt. And there's no real momentum until we really finally hit the road. And I do think there are a couple truly great moments here. There's the roadblock mountain scene, which I think was really good. And the biker ferries I found quite amusing as well. And I will say, the ending is near perfect. Just like Captain Marvel, right? Which I think nailed its landing. I would say for this would even be better than that. That Onward's ending is beautiful and wonderful. And I think that the film as a whole, how it handles loss and grief and how it's able to translate that to an audience of all ages was just fascinating to me that they're able to pull that off. I mean, it was very heart-wrenching and sad, but happy. It does a pretty good job of just exemplifying grief and how maybe helping children be able to deal with something like that. And I'll say that, Matt, this is a visual feast. I think, granted, I know this is probably just due to the advancements in technology that keep coming, but this is the best looking one I've seen, I think, so far. And I say that each time we see one. But I mean, I was wowed quite a few times at some of the technology rendering, the artistic rendering that we saw on this thing. And then finally, I want to praise Tom Holland. I think this is some top shelf voice acting for this film. Pratt's okay, but I think the rest of them, Holland and Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who plays the mom, Octavia Spencer, who's the Manticore, right? I mean, but Holland really brings this thing to another level with that performance. I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think this is more in my wheelhouse because, I'm much more of I got a kick
D&D
out of the whole
guy in you.
The D&D guy in me. I got a much bigger kick out of this. I think anybody who's into the tabletop RPG stuff, which is having a bit of a renaissance right now, I think you'll enjoy this. You'll get a kick out of this, and I think like you said, the message is fantastic. I think for me, a lot of Pixar films like Coco, for like the majority of its runtime, I only thought it was okay, and then it really picked up. I think so. I don't know how many times you've watched it. I've watched it multiple times since then, since we watched it the first time. I think it has some, those films and Inside Out, they have really strong moments, whereas I don't think everything taken as a whole necessarily is good from beginning to end, whereas this, I was more on board with it, and I think that's just because most of everything else going around those big moments that Pixar seems to have was in my wheelhouse. I think that's really what it is. So I guess if it's something that you are into and kind of looking at the little Easter eggs and stuff like that, I think you're going to get a lot of enjoyment out of it.
I probably didn't catch a lot of those Easter eggs. For all my nerdiness and geekiness growing up, I was never into D&D. So
you had your limits, right?
Yeah, I would never be what you would refer to as a... So I don't... That's just not. It wasn't my thing. That's probably my favorite episode of Community. The TV show was the D&D one.
Yeah.
But no, well, we both enjoyed it. It just sounds like just a slightly different levels, which I think is the catchphrase or the modus operandi of this show.
Mm-hmm. It is. It's usually the other way around. I'm more at a base level, I'm usually underwhelmed by most things, but looks like it's reversed this time, guys.
Yeah, but it's definitely worth checking out, and it's worth your time. Matt, I'm going to give Onward a B.
Are you?
Just because the open, it just really took a while for me to get moving with this thing.
Yeah, see, I'm going to give it an A-. I really enjoyed it.
There you go. Onward is currently playing in theaters near you. I saw it in the Dolby Theater. And I always go back and forth on this. I'm the same way with like Blu-ray or 4K, particularly on animated films. Like how much clearer can the picture really get?
Right.
But it still was quite an experience with the Dolby audio system. I'll say that. If you've had a chance to see Onward, shoot us an email at feedback@thefirstrun.com. Matt, why don't we go ahead and transition and talk about what's coming out on your physical media picks this upcoming Tuesday, March 17th. Matt, it's going to be the sequel to a film I haven't even seen the original yet, but you've told me is quite good. So let's hear a clip.
"14 texts and 4 missed calls. I don't think he went out. I think he went back in."
No.
Why?
Come on,
Why
man.
would he do that?
Do you remember what it was like in there?
I got eaten by a freaking hippo!
I got killed by a piece of cake.
Guys! How's he gonna get out?
He's got to take the green jewel.
And stick it back in the statue thing. By himself?
So that, of course, is a clip from Jumanji: The Next Level, with Jack Black, Dwayne Johnson, Kevin Hart, and Karen Gillan. Still haven't seen the original, Matt, but you did say it's entertaining and it's worth watching.
Yeah,
right?
it's a pleasant. It was a pleasant surprise. I rather enjoyed the original. It's a good time. I think you'd like it.
Have you seen the sequel?
I have not seen the sequel yet.
Okay, well, now's your big chance. If you get it from Best Buy, you get a steel book. There's a gag reel, a whole bunch of making of featurettes, including one focused on Rhys Darby, who, if you're a fan of Flight of the Conchords or any of Taika Waititi's films, I think he's in all of them. He's the redheaded, New Zealand comedian. He's absolutely hilarious. There's a whole bunch of stuff, though. So if you like this one, you can pick up this finally. The 2019 reinterpretation of Black Christmas that, Matt, you did not see. I did see. I rather enjoyed it. It really takes the original... Well, it takes almost nothing from the original film, nor the remake. In fact, I think it is a vast critique, perhaps even on the remake itself. But it definitely has a feminist vibe to it, and it has a lot to say. I enjoyed it. There's someone I follow on Twitter who absolutely hated it, and she's a female critic, and she found it to be an exceptionally lazy and dumb feminist take on the property, which was disappointing to me. And I let her know that, but basically with like a sad emoji. Basically, it was. I told her I thought it was a really interesting concept, and it did a lot with what it was trying to say. And she's like, "I hated this thing," and I'm like, ... Never mind. Includes feature commentary by the director, Sophia Takala, and star Imogen Poots, an alternate ending, some deleted and extended scenes, and more. Clint Eastwood's Richard Jewell film about Richard Jewell is being released. There's a making of and the real story of Monsieur Jewell included on that as a special feature. Terrence Malick's latest film, Matt, A Hidden Life, which I hear is a return to form and something we're going to likely have to work in at some point. The Austrian Franz Jagerstatter, he's a conscientious objector, Matt, and refuses to fight for the Nazis in World War II. Dread Central is giving us Candy Corn. I think this thing is supposed to be coming out for a couple years now, but it looks like it's finally getting its Blu-ray release on Halloween Eve. Of course, why not? I mean, it's the middle of March. Local outcast Jacob Atkins is carelessly murdered. A vagabond carny named Dr. Death takes matters in his own hands, bringing Jacob back from the dead to creatively seek brutal revenge on his killers. Abigail. A young girl named Abigail lives in a city, Matt, whose borders were closed many years ago because of an epidemic of a mysterious disease. Timely. Abby's father is one of the sick, and he was taken when she was 6 years old. Going against the authorities to find her father, Abby learns that her city is actually full of magic, and she discovers within herself extraordinary magical abilities. It's kind of a Harry Potter riff combined with the terrifying news of the day.
Okay.
A film that appeared on Shudder, A Bluebird in My Heart, is getting its Blu-ray release as well. Attempting to lead a quiet, reformed life, an ex-con finds refuge in a motel run by a single mother and her daughter Clara. The peace and freedom he has found in the safe haven disappears when Clara is assaulted, forcing him to face his old demons. I love these kind of revenge kind of movies when the guy goes crazy and starts taking out people who did something horrible. Matt, you'll be excited about this one. The DC animated film Superman Red Son is being released. This is the film where basically what would happen if Kal-El's ship landed in the Soviet Union. Includes a DC showcase. There's an animated short about the Phantom Stranger, which is one of my favorite characters. It's by Bruce Timm, so you can always check that one out. And it's set in the 70s. There's a Cold Red War, a new featurette, an exploration of the Cold War through the lens of the Elseworlds classic Superman Red Son. 2 episodes from the Superman Red Son motion comic book, and a sneak peek of the next DC animated movie, Justice League Dark Apocalypse War. New to Blue, Bamboozled by Criterion, Spike Lee's film about a frustrated African-American TV writer who proposes a blackface minstrel show in protest, but much to his chagrin, Matt, it becomes a massive hit. It's a brand new 2K restoration supervised by the director of photography and by Spike Lee himself. An audio commentary ported over from 2001. New interviews and conversations as well. I've never seen Bamboozled, includes some deleted scenes, but I'm looking forward to catching up with this. Maybe I'll look out and I'll show up on the Criterion channel soon. Cannibal Apocalypse, directed by... That's right, I'm saving that for the stinger. Directed by Antonio Magretti, is being released. It's a brand new 4K restoration of the unrated, uncut version of the film. A new audio commentary by film historian Tim Lucas. This film stars John Saxon. He's a Vietnam vet who he's back home now, and one of his old war buddies has developed a taste for cannibalism. And it starts a virus that spreads across the town. Warner Archive is releasing The Stalking Moon, starring Gregory Peck and Eva Marie Saint, where Peck plays a veteran Army scout who agrees to escort a former Apache captive and her half-Indian son to safety across the sprawling Southwest. Matt, do you remember The Quest from 1986?
Yeah, I vaguely remember the title. I don't remember what it's about, like, at all.
It was also known as Frog Dreaming and The Go Kids. A U.S. orphan, played by Henry Thomas, and his girlfriend Rachel Friend explore the Aboriginal legend of a lake monster in Australia. Scorpion releasing is giving us Raw Courage from 1984. This is a Ronnie Cox-held film. He starred and wrote and produced it. 3 ultramarathoners are on a 72-mile race in the New Mexico desert when they encounter a group of weekend warrior survivalist types who want to play with the Little Runner Boys. If you're not familiar, Ronnie Cox is Dick Jones from RoboCop. Big-time kind of that guy from the 70s and 80s. It's a brand new 2K remaster of the film, as well as a new interview with Ronnie Cox. Best Buy is releasing steelbook editions of all 4 currently available Daniel Craig James Bond films in 4K. So a while back, Matt, remember when they released that 4K Daniel Craig collection, the first 4K Bond discs? And you may not remember this, but I said, who is this even for? Like, why would you buy just the 4 Craig films when you know a 5th one's coming out?
Right.
And then there'll be, I'm sure, a massive 4K box set at some point, right? So why would somebody buy this? Well, somebody bought it. I picked it up this past week because I had a $5 Best Buy reward certificate, and it was on sale for $40. Now, that's $10 a pop.
Right.
For 4K Bond films that also include Blu-rays, 4K discs, and digital copies. Right? So now I'm $35 to get digital copies of Casino and Quantum, which I didn't have, as well as 4K of all 4 films. I think at that point it was worth
it pays for itself, really.
Exactly.
You're a fool not to buy it.
Exactly. And I just watched the 4K of Casino Royale today. And includes the unrated director's cut of Casino Royale, which sounds awesome, but it's basically like 30 seconds of an extended action scene that's a little more violent. There's really nothing to it. I don't even know if it's 30 seconds or maybe 10. It's really nothing, but it's one of those sell points that they feature on the cover. I'm not upset I did it. I'm not upset.
You never are.
That's true. I have no shame. Your straight-to-DVD pick of the week is Point Doom from 2000. A Hollywood talent agent's girlfriend thrusts him into a world of strip clubs, drugs, and deadly motorcycle gangs. Starring, and I hope you're sitting down, this is from 2000 again, Ice-T, Zach Galligan, Angie Everhart, Andrew Dice Clay, and your headliner, Richard Grieco. What should we be streaming this week, Matt?
So in honor of the latest Pixar film, I'm going to recommend, not without qualifications, what was billed as the live-action Pixar film, John Carter of Mars, just John Carter, is an adaptation of the Edward Rice Burroughs, the creator of Conan. Basically, an Earth man gets transported to Mars, and there's a war on Mars, and it's full of Martians, and he becomes a great hero and kind of leads a revolt against the ruling class of Mars. It's directed by Andrew Stanton, who directed WALL-E and Finding Nemo, and it was also co-written by Mark Andrews, who wrote Brave. So it's not without its flaws, but it's not as bad as its reputation pointed out to be. It's actually a pretty lighthearted, fun film.
What do you think the failure of the film was?
I think the failure was... maybe it's simplistic to say this, but I mean, just calling a film John Carter and expecting it to kind of trade on like this pulp character from the 20s or whatever, that was probably a misstep. They probably should have just called it The Princess of Mars, which is what the first one was called. So
All right. And while we're talking about Pixar and Disney, I do want to take a minute. I forgot I wanted to ask you about this. What do you think about having a Simpsons short at the beginning of Onward? I gotta be honest with you, I didn't like it. First off, I didn't think the short itself was terribly good, but I like the fact that they've given other artists, and we've had Piper, right, on Umbrella. What was that Umbrella one? There was the one with the Love Note letter thing, which is absolutely one of my all-time favorite animated shorts. It actually made me cry when I watched it. It was so pure. And then I get this kind of subpar Simpsons episode.
Right.
What do you think of that?
It was inoffensive. It wasn't particularly up to the standard of the things that we've seen before. I guess it didn't even really register with me. That's what that was. That was kind of that preceding short that they always seem to have. And I just thought, oh yeah, they bought The Simpsons, so they're kind of flexing their Simpsons muscle. But I mean, to be honest, I mean, The Simpsons hasn't been good in 20 years, so.
Yeah, I hope this isn't what it's going to be now. I don't want to start seeing Simpson shorts at the front of every Pixar's film.
Maybe, would it make you feel better if they got like Conan to come back and write one?
No.
I'm
over it. I don't think I've watched an episode of The Simpsons since season 5 or 6.
Dude, you're missing some of the best ones. You got to watch they're all available on Disney Plus. You got to watch from season 2 to, people argue, somewhere between 10 and 12. There's some, the best stuff is season 7 to 9. Or some really solid classic stuff is 7 to 9.
Fair enough. All right, I'll add it to the list. Lord knows I got nothing else going on that I'm watching. I watched Casino Royale today for the 12th time.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah. That's why watch something you haven't seen when you could watch something that you have. And look, we're all going to be sequestered for 2 weeks at a time.
That's true.
You know? So you're gonna need things to do.
That's a fair point. All right, let's move on, Matt, and spend a few minutes talking about Come Drink With Me for some reason.
You'll write a letter to the governor. If he is willing to release our leader, then we'll let you go. That way both sides are happy, right?
No. My job is to keep the peace and see justice is done. As for the governor, he is a resolute man. He won't be intimidated by bandits. Kill me or beat me. Do your worst.
Master Chang, we know the governor is your father. I seriously doubt he'll sacrifice his son just to keep his job.
He'll stick to the law. He will never negotiate and trade hostages. But if you free me now, then surrender yourselves. I'll overlook this and forget what you've done here.
You'll be dead soon. Stop posturing.
So that, Matt, is basically the plot of Come Drink With Me, right? Mm-hmm. There is so they have the leader who's been captured, he's been arrested or is being held, whatever. So they kidnap the son of the governor or of the guy in charge, and they want to do a prisoner exchange. Mm-hmm. But the good guys have a secret weapon in the Golden Swallow, who is awesome.
The general's daughter.
There you go, the general's daughter. But she has a little bit of a hidden guardian angel who is this, I guess it's not, what's the right word? It's not the drunken master, because that's actually Jackie Chan.
They call him the drunk cat.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Who actually is a martial arts, as a kung fu master as well. Who's kind of looking out for her and kind of helping her out, giving her little clues and pointing her in the right direction and warding off bad guys. And eventually, of course, the two of them team up to take on the major baddies. So, Matt, let me ask you, how much better can a film be than its title?
Quite a bit, if this one's any indication. This is one of the few that I've seen before, Chris, so I'm actually curious to see what your thoughts are, because this is considered the first wuxia film, and it's considered maybe one of the best of these kind of Hong Kong, films in general of all time.
So what is wuxia, Matt? I'm a little ignorant with that.
So you're familiar with Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon?
Is it derogatory to say this? Like wire fu, that's what it's known as, right?
Yeah, so I mean, it's basically, I'll read the first line of the Wikipedia. Wuxia literally means martial heroes, and it is a genre of Chinese fiction concerning the adventures of martial artists in ancient China. So it's traditionally a form of fantasy literature, but they started making movies in that style.
Okay.
And obviously Crouching Tiger being probably the most famous one to Western audiences.
It's basically like superheroes.
Arthurian legends kind of thing, stuff like that,
Gotcha. Well, outside of its bizarre title, which, I mean, I guess I know where it's coming from, because the Golden Swallow asks the drunken cat, or the drunken knight, I guess he's also known as, to drink with her after he helps her a couple times, and she wants to show him respect. But it's a weird thing to hang your title on. I will say, Matt, that this is probably the most compelling film I think we've seen of both marathons up to this point.
Even more than the Street Fighter.
There is and now it makes sense to me, an almost kind of classic fairy tale-esque feel to this thing. That, listen, there's two different films, and it's hard, I think, to kind of compare the two of them. Street Fighter is a grindhouse martial arts film.
Which is awesome.
Exactly. And this is different. This is more, as I said, like you said, like an Arthurian legend, like a classic fantasy-esque Princess Bride type of martial arts film. It's very entertaining. It's a lot of fun. The action I found to be thrilling. Again, though, the dialogue is always ham-fistedly delivered, as you heard in that clip.
And that's the charm of these things. I love it.
But structurally, the film is very engaging, and I found it to be thrilling. There's some actually really fascinating camera work in this as well. There's one like dolly shot where they're at the bar fight. I absolutely adored it, where the Golden Swallow is being slowly surrounded by these bad guys, and the camera pulls back as more of them kind of come into frame and surround her. And it was really fun and cool to see that. And there's a lot of little touches and moments like that in here. What I don't get in these films, and again, this is maybe my just dumb American ignorance, why nobody can ever figure out that the martial artist is a woman and not a man.
I know, right? That's weird.
They always say man or boy.
Yeah, it's not even close.
I don't get it. But still, I really enjoyed this thing, and it had a more engaging, I think, narrative than most of the films we've seen, outside of, like you say, just the absolute madness that is Street Fighter. There is no X-ray punches in this one, unfortunately, but still, it's a lot of fun, and I absolutely loved it. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah.
Did it hold up for you as a repeat viewing?
Yeah, it is. I probably appreciated it more because I really got into these things because of Bruce Lee and the kind of grindhousey, grimy stuff and the bad dubbing. All of that is the charm for it for me. Whereas this, besides the bad dubbing, it's more got an old Hollywood feel to it. It's got these sweeping vistas, these outdoor shots, all this kind of craft to it that you don't see in a lot of the ones that kind of brought me to this genre in the first place. And I think it's an important distinction to call it a wuxia film because it's not like I don't know if this is racist to say, but like a chop suey flick, as they used to call them in the 70s. Whereas this is more like a fairy tale fantasy epic kind of thing. And it's a whole different animal, but I think it's something that people should be exposed to.
Oh, for sure. And I see here, according to the Wikipedia page, there were, in 2007, a couple of people who will hopefully soon be rotting in hell. Bob and Harvey Weinstein had announced that Quentin Tarantino was going to remake the film.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
But things shifted, and he made Inglourious Bastards instead. But I gotta admit, I would be really curious to see QT's version of this film. Or at least, I'm sure it would be a loose adaptation of it.
Right.
But, I'm going to give Come Drink With Me an A-, Matt.
I gave it a B+. I really like this film a lot. But at the same time, if you gave me the choice between this and Street Fighter or a Bruce Lee film, I would pick the latter.
I can appreciate that. I can't really fault you with that. For me, it would be entirely what kind of mood I was in. If I wanted to see some bone-crunching Mortal Kombat-esque action, then I would probably go with one of those. But if I wanted to have a nice little, as I say, enjoy my cup of Earl Grey and a nice narrative with some good performances, if you can ignore the dialogue delivery, then I think this is a great one to watch.
I'm really excited for this next one. I've not seen this next one, but Chris, this is a sequel to the 5 Venoms from our previous marathon from before.
It is. So Crippled Avengers is a sequel
to
the 5. Oh, fantastic.
So I've never seen it, so we're going to be watching it together. First impressions.
Okay, that'll be good. Come Drink With Me is currently streaming on Amazon Prime. If you've had a chance to see it, shoot us an email at feedback@thefirstrun.com. Again, Matt, cavernous distances between you and I and our reviews.
I know.
And it also never gets old, me saying that every week. I think it's funny every time. Let's spend a few minutes, Matt, and talk about what we think are the 5 best animated films since 2000. Well, from 2010 to 2019. Matt, here's one that didn't quite make the cut for me. This clip is representational of possibly one of my all-time favorite moments in a comic book ever. So enjoy.
I don't like it. It's stirring things up. And with Gordon pushing internal affairs to go after Flash would be difficult to replace. And if he were to talk?
Let me worry about Flash. Relax, Carmine. I got everything under control.
What the hell's going on?
The lights! What happened to the lights?
Ladies, gentlemen, you've eaten well. You've eaten Gotham's wealth, its spirit, but your feast is nearly over. From this moment on, none of you are safe.
So that, of course, is a clip from Batman Year One, one of my all-time favorite comics. Frank Miller written, and David Mazzucchelli, who is the artist, probably one of my favorite interpretations of Batman ever. I used to like the big tall ears when I was younger. Mm-hmm. Then as I've gotten older, and I think I've reread Year One 3 or 4 times. And it is so good. And the art, I love it's, how has I heard it once described this? His Batman was kind of like a manta ray, just floating and kind of, it just, and it's perfect. That's how he draws them, and it's perfect. It has that kind of gritty, Year One, like just starting out feel to even to the costume. It's simple in a way, and it's a lush use of blacks and shading. It's fantastic. So, and that is my preferred version of aesthetically of Batman is the Year One. What about you, Matt? You a Year One fan?
Yeah, I like Year One. I mean, although I'll be hackneyed and say that if I'm choosing a Frank Miller, I'm always going to choose Dark Knight Returns, even though it's what it's kind of come to represent later.
Yes.
Whatever happened to Frank Miller, man?
That guy's crazy. It's what happened to him.
Nuts. I know, man.
Have you seen Year One, the animated version?
I haven't. No.
It's pretty good. So I'll start everything off, Matt. I'll give you the ultimate number 1.
Okay.
My number 5 is Pixar's Inside Out, which I think we mentioned briefly, which is wonderful in its message, how it helps kids and adults even kind of deal with their emotions and dealing with change, represented by each character represents a different emotion, and how growth and maturity is helping to realize that that sadness and anger can actually help you in a way, as long as you can interpret them and work with them properly. A lot of fun performances. Amy Poehler, of course, plays Joy and is a blast. I mean, the whole cast is universally good, and it's a very heady concept that Pixar is able to distill in this really easily digestible and understandable way in an animated film, and it's beautiful. So that's my number 5.
Yep, I think that's the movie theater got dusty with Bing Bong. That's the section of that film. Every Pixar film has one, and that's for that one.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. All right, so my number 5 is I don't know if you've ever seen this film, but is Big Hero 6.
Yeah,
wasn't kind of a. I mean, as far as commercial returns and kind of impact on the broader culture at large, I don't think it really had that much of an impact. But I remember when I saw this film, I was surprised at how much I liked it. Essentially, a story about a team of geniuses that make themselves into superheroes using their own kind of ingenuity, and it's kind of wrapped up in this familial story of kind of the loss of a sibling and trying to kind of make your way through by losing your father figure. Kind of like Onward a little bit maybe, but I really enjoyed it, and I think Baymax is a particularly fun character.
Yeah, it didn't really work for me at all. I remember walking out of that thing.
You're wrong.
And I was thinking, all right, that's fine. I really had no real impact on me whatsoever. I'm not sure why that is, because you think a Disney, a Pixar superhero kind of movie is something I'd be all over, right? But it just left me cold. I don't know what it was. Not a hugest fan of that thing. Maybe I need to revisit it. I don't know.
Maybe.
My number 4 then, Matt, is the only stop motion animation film on my list, and that is Wes Anderson's Isle of Dogs. Exceptionally clever, very funny, an all-star cast as always with Wes Anderson's films. But as a dog lover as well, there's a lot to enjoy with this thing. It's very, in some ways, very, very dark, but not as dark as his horror film, right? Which is what Grand Budapest Hotel. But still, it's a fun little message. A young boy, all the dogs, there's a disease or something that they're spreading, so all the dogs are exiled to an island. And this one boy is sent. He goes to try and rescue his dog, and that's it. So it's really sweet and cute and funny and very, very clever. And I love stop motion animation. I don't watch enough of it. I've only seen 1 or 2 Leica films, right? So there's a lot of stuff I need to catch up with. But I think Isle of Dogs is a lot of fun, and I enjoy the hell out of it. So there you go.
There you go. All right, so my number 4, I can already feel people groaning, and I'm right there with you. But then, I took a step back, and I said, you know what? I challenge all of you to kind of go back and remember when you first watched this thing, and that's Frozen. It's become such a juggernaut cultural force, and it's basically cliche because it's so saturated. But I remember the first time I saw this with my daughter, and I had a really good time. It was a completely different kind of structure to the classic kind of princess story. The voice actors and Kristen Bell, they're all great. And just the structure and the songs of it are some of the best that Disney's done in a long time. I know that it's just because it's been just everywhere. And, if you were ever around a kid, you probably know all the words to Let It Go and many of the other Frozen songs just like I do. But I don't think that necessarily should detract from the fact that it really is a very well-crafted and put-together animated film.
Yep. I have never seen it.
Never?
No, I think it was such a huge phenomenon. I don't have any kids. I got a dog, so that's why I watch Isle of Dogs a lot. But I haven't seen it. Just, as you said, it's just this overwhelming force that it's one of those where you just rebel. Like, I don't want to watch this thing because everybody has seen it. I've heard, too, some people think Tangled is better. Is that true? I'm assuming you've seen that, too?
I have seen Tangled multiple times. Tangled is really good. I don't think it's quite as good, but it's kind of I think Tangled's like the first film where you can kind of see Disney kind of rebounding itself back from the brink of Tarzan and the like that came after Lion King. So
and
Tangled was good.
And that Let It Go song, I mean, I haven't seen the film, but I know how ubiquitous it was that I don't want to hear it ever again. So I can't imagine experiencing it in the film for the first time.
You may need to just suck it up and just watch the movie.
Is it on Disney Plus? It must be, right?
I'm sure it is. I'm sure you can stream it somewhere.
All right. I don't know. I got to watch Casino Royale again. I actually got to watch Quantum of Solace at some point.
Yeah, you got to watch Quantum of Solace, a movie you've probably only seen 6 or 7 times?
6. But it's now in 4K.
Uh-huh.
Number 3 is Coco from Pixar as well. A film I will defend to my death. A film that, not that I need to, I think it's properly appreciated, but is a young boy who's dealing with death in his family and refuses to accept it. And he actually crosses over into the land of the dead. Set in Mexico with I think entirely Hispanic cast. And it is, again, some absolutely stunning visuals by Pixar in this film, and another treatise on how to deal with grief and the loss of loved ones. Some very heavy stuff that it handles perfectly with a sweet message. And I think out of all the Pixar films, I think outside of the opening 6 minutes of Up, that the end of Coco just devastated me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was flat out crying in the theater. Not just a tear, Matt, or two. I was crying in the theater. And that doesn't typically happen. So, Coco is a beautiful, wonderful little film. So it's my number 3.
Yeah, Coco's really good. And I think, but again, for me, I'm right there with Chris when they start that end that part hits, it's like a gut punch of emotion right there.
Mhm.
But for me, the 60 minutes leading up to that part is not as compelling, I think, as that piece of it right there.
Gross.
I mean, obviously you need to tell everything before it so it has that emotional resonance, but it's just not as good as I think as that piece is.
Agree to disagree.
That's right. We can agree to disagree. This is where the rubber hits the road, guys. This is where we start to argue with each other.
Mhm.
All right. So my number 3 is Wreck-It Ralph. Essentially the story of a bad guy who's not a bad guy, trying to be more than what he is, in a video game world, which is a nice set of Easter eggs and fun stuff for somebody of my bent who's into video games. But I kind of like the message. It's not about necessarily loss. It's more about being who you are and kind of breaking out. And as cliche and hackneyed as this is, the power of friendship. And it's a fun film. Everything. Sarah Silverman, John C. Reilly are great. It's a lot of fun.
It's very funny.
Yeah.
It's my number 6. I loved Wreck-It Ralph as well. Okay, my number 2 is the only non-mainstream film in my list.
Okay.
It's called It's Such a Beautiful Day. It's a collection of 3 shorts by Don Hertzfeldt.
Did that actually come out in 2010?
When I did my list, it did. Let me double check that. Let's hope not. I didn't screw everything up.
Okay. So when I was doing my research, that didn't come up, and that is a fantastic film.
So let's double check here. According to Wikipedia, it's 2012.
Okay.
Is it still on Netflix? I remember I think that's where we watched it originally.
I think it is. I think I would. God, that's such a good movie. I'm putting that on my list. Big Hero 6 out.
Okay.
I don't know. This is like it's slotting this into like 2 somewhere. But keep going.
So it's basically stick figure animation, right? But it tackles some truly kind of deep, dark, and philosophical subjects with humor. And it's fascinating how moving, Matt, and beautiful just the simplest art can be. This thing, again, just like Coco, it was just floored me with the amount of emotional heft that it's able to deliver with just this stick figure kind of animation. And I don't want to talk about it because there's so many wonderful things about it that I feel like I want you to go in as cold as possible and just be prepared to be knocked on your butt by its beauty, its simpleness, just how full and enriching and deep the whole thing is. I don't know. You love it. Say a few things about it too. I guess it would be your number 2 potentially.
Yeah, I completely missed that one. Man, that is such a good film. Like, it was available on Netflix. I think it still is. It's by Don Hertzfeldt, who kind of I think he's got some of his other films that are available on Netflix, and you should check them out if you can. The thing is barely an hour long, very simplistically done, has these moments of real kind of absurd humor that just kind of shifts slowly and gradually into like this kind of pathos, and it really takes you on an emotional journey throughout this whole thing. And it is just a fantastic film. It is so good. Yeah. If you haven't seen it, it's like I said, it's barely an hour. If that, you owe it to yourself to watch it.
According to Just Watch It, whatever it is, Just Watch, the streaming app.
Yeah.
It is not available anywhere.
That is a crime.
That is horrible. I mean, man, just when I was putting the list together and just talking about it now, man, I want to rewatch it again. I'm curious how much it is on iTunes. So I clearly then we have the same number 1, and
we don't, because I still have a pick that I don't think it would be off the list. I still want to talk about it though.
Really? Your number 1 isn't the same number 1 as mine?
Probably not.
Maybe. I'd be shocked by that. I don't want to spoil it for you. I feel like it's got to be your number 1. It has to be.
It probably is, but we haven't mentioned the Lego movie yet.
No, I haven't. And that's it's like my 7.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm going to say the Lego movie, something that should not have worked as well as it did, taking basically a block property that has no story associated with it and just kind of making this joke-a-minute laugh film with a good message about trying to be who you are and obviously kind of working your way through to kind of fulfill what you feel like you need to do. But the jokes in that thing are just fantastic. Come on, man. A spaceship full of bon vivants. That got me. That got me.
I forgot how good that was. I think part of the issue too is I dislike the second one so much.
Yeah, the second one's a huge disappointment, but the first one is so good.
But that's not your number one.
That's not my number one. No,
All
that
right.
was my number two before we talked about.
Okay.
We talked about It's Such a Beautiful Day.
It's Such a Beautiful Day isn't on Netflix or Amazon isn't on iTunes or Amazon for purchase.
It's just not available anywhere.
I don't understand this.
That is a nightmare.
How is this not available? I wonder if it's available on the guy's site.
Probably is.
I'm really crestfallen by this. This blows my mind. It's not available. That's what's wrong with this country right now. I think I can distill it into that. It's like when people say like, well, I'm not saying David Bowie's death was a big factor in kind of holding everything together, but then it's like then just gestures around. You look around how everything's going. I would add that to the list. Wow. All right. You'd think though that should be my number one, talking about how much I've talked about it, but in the end, I have to go to my roots, and I have to say that the best animated film from 2010 2019 for me, perhaps redefined superhero movies, particularly animated ones, and is probably the best one of this particular character that we've seen, including the Tom Holland Marvel ones. And and the number one is
Into the Spider-Verse.
Yes. So you're you think even bigger fan of this thing than I am. So
I am.
Run with it. It is my number one. It's your number one. Go ahead, talk about it.
Yeah, as Chris said, I mean, this thing, it may be one of the best superhero movies ever made of any medium. It is absolutely perfectly captures what Spider-Man is all about. And really, I just love the fact that they managed to kind of encapsulate not only the kind of different versions of Peter Parker with the Chris Pine version versus the Jake Johnson version, bringing in Miles Morales, bringing in Spider-Woman that is Gwen Stacy. Everything about it is just executed perfectly, and just the visuals of it, the way they just kind of shift and the way they just do different things, it's just incredible the things that they were able to accomplish. It is just an absolute riveting film to watch. Why it's the best comic book film I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, it is. What it's able to do and basically bring, a lot of people don't like Ang Lee's Hulk, but it was the purest form of a comic book, I think, come to life in the cinemas up to that point. And clearly maybe even since, since until now with Into the Spider-Verse. As you said, it's the perfect description of Peter Parker, and Miles Morales is able to stand in for us and for Peter Parker. He's able to kind of be that next character. It's fascinating watching Peter Parker's kind of character, his youthful young version of Spider-Man, reinterpreted through the Miles Morales lens, and it works just as well, and it captures the essence of the character perfectly. And visually, it's a feast. There's so many different fascinating, interesting things that they do with that thing that you can't take your eyes off of it. It's fantastic. It's gorgeous. It's a ton of fun. I cannot wait for the sequel. So I think it is the best animated film of that decade. So, Matt, It's Such a Beautiful Day. There's one copy on Blu-ray you can buy on Amazon for $30 right now. Only one.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it is streaming on Vimeo.
Okay.
Supposedly.
All right. Well, I'm sure if you go to donhertzfeld.com, you can maybe find it.
God, horrible. And of course, Into the Spider-Verse you can get everywhere. And I think it's still streaming on Netflix, I believe, right? It is on Netflix. So, honorable mentions, Matt?
Yeah, which we didn't mention so far. So, Toy Story 3, I think, again, I'll reiterate what I said about Pixar. The ending of that is like, I have to control myself no matter how many times I've seen it, just not tear up watching that thing. I thought the Lego Batman movie was surprisingly effective. That was a lot of fun. How to Train Your Dragon is actually a really fun movie. The first one is a really good one.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah. I wouldn't say run out and get it, but you'll enjoy it if you watch it. And I'm going to throw it out there. Controversial pick, but Teen Titans Go to the Movies. Just the send-up of comic book movies, and especially the DC Universe in particular, is it's chef's kiss. It's so good. It's so good.
I
so
still have to
good.
see that. Yeah, you were saying it was quite good.
Yeah.
Stuff that you didn't mention, I would say I'd add Toy Story 4 to it as well as 3. Zootopia I enjoyed as well. And then a couple things, Matt, we haven't seen. One of them we will be checking out, I think, in the next few weeks. I Lost My Body, which is currently streaming on Netflix.
Yep.
Anomalisa, I haven't seen. I've heard is quite good. And then just doing some research, I love just the title of this, though I have no idea what it's about. Detective Conan: Dimensional Sniper. I believe it's an anime.
Okay.
But my hope was that it was like an Arnold Schwarzenegger Conan the Barbarian, who is now a private detective, and he has to fight a dimensional sniper, a sniper through dimensions.
That sounds like $1 million idea, Chris. You better get right in your treatment on that one.
Yeah, we can make Arnold look young now too. We can do it. He doesn't have to be though. He's retired. He's a PI now.
It's very true.
I'm onto something. All right. What's your favorite animated film from 2010 to 2019? Shoot us an email at feedback@thefirstrun.com and let us know. Coming up next week, here's the thing. So, the long-delayed Hunt, or The Hunt, is being released. We had Bloodshot lined up. And, Matt, we do have our 5 best non-Marvel DC comic book movies, right? Which I think would be a fun list to do. I don't know if we're going to do Bloodshot or The Hunt. My goal is to see both. We'll see what Matt can fit in. And then we'll be doing Crippled Avengers, which Matt says is a sequel to the 5 Deadly Venoms. So we'll have to see how that shakes out. I also, too, Never Rarely, Sometimes Always, which was on my most anticipated list of the first half of the year, is getting its limited release. And all I keep hearing, Matt, is how wonderful that film is, how powerful it is. So I'm going to have to catch up with it at some point, though I don't think it's playing around here yet. In the next few weeks, look for us on Screen Fix. Rumor has it I will be trying to fix The Invisible Man with JC and Miss Lady Juan. Just go for the screenfixpod.com and look them up on all your podcast locations. And Matt will be joining them to discuss New Mutants, which may eventually come out. Who knows?
I'm confident.
We'll see. So look for that in the next few weeks, perhaps a month. In the meantime, check us out at thefirstrun.com. We're also on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. Do a search for The First Run. Scroll. Eventually, you will find us. Go over to Apple Podcasts and give us a review. It'll help other people find the show. And, of course, I will read it on air. All right, Matt. That was pretty good. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, it was a good one.
So let's go ahead, take an extended break, and we will see you all soon.
Come si chiama lei? Antonio Margareti. Ancora? Margareti.
Un'altra volta, ma adesso vorrei proprio sentire la musica delle parole.
Margareti.